All right, Programming 12. Now we're going to look at the GIF class. So this was a checkpoint that you were meant to do. And this is the answers on how to figure out, anyways, how to put together a GIF class. It would require you to know how to make the GIF in the first place. So I'm going to assume you've watched those videos. If not, you might want to go check those out. And that was in Unit 1. So go back to the Unit 1 playlist. All right, so here we go. We've clearly made a GIF class because we can make GIF variables, and we get some secrets about how the constructor works by looking at this information here. And I guess I have some I've sort of coded out the different possibilities. There's actually going to be two constructors later on. We'll figure that out, but not right now. And then we can see we also have a show function where it's telling the banana 1 and 2 to show and the pawn to show and all these different things. So let's get to it. Let's take a look at the GIF. So here's what a GIF contains. Its instance variables include a p-image array. That's going to be all the pictures that are in the GIF. And every GIF has to have its own p-image array. That's why it's an instance variable. We also have to know how many frames are built in. Technically, I suppose the array knows how much its length. It can figure that out. But I'm just going to put it as a variable. It's fine. Speed is going to be how often do we change the frame. Do we do it every frame of animation? Do we every second frame of animation? Do we every fifth frame? What is that? So speed represents that. Current frame represents what frame of the GIF are we on. Are we on the beginning? Are we at the end? Are we in the middle somewhere? This tells us and keeps track of that. We have to keep track of that individually as an instance variable so that different GIFs can be at different places at different times. Last but not least, we have the good old X, Y, width, and height. So that can be our sizing and such. Okay, so first of all, the basic constructor is just like this. We have the following things. We have ourselves creating the array itself, and we should have size n. And of course, that gets sent as a parameter. So if we go back, we can see, this is the n variable here. This matches up. We have two strings. I'll get into that in a minute. Here's how many pictures. And you'd have to manually count those and find out what it is when you create it. So that is our n, and then of course we record that information to be stored forevermore in the inside of the GIF. Speed, we'll take a look at how that works later, but we record that information. We assign current frame to 0 as our sort of default. It probably begins at the beginning. I suppose you could create a parameter if you wanted to change that. And then we have, of course, our x and y. That's going to be where it is, and that's specified when we call it. So this one's at 0, 0, for example, whereas this banana. Well, this banana is also at 0, 0, but this one over here is at 300, 0. So, we can move these around and put them in different places. And then we actually have to load all the files, all the images into our array. And you might recognize this code. This code was built. This code is basically what we had in our non-object-oriented version. It was what was in the setup. It's a while loop that goes and loads all the images. And that's what this pre and post thing is. If you recall, I'll just open up my images. We have, this is what they look like, right? There's a frame underscore, and then a number, and then underscore delay, blah, blah, blah. So that's what we send it. So the information before the number and after the number. So here, for example, koi pond / frame underscore, and then here's the part that comes after the number. You might wonder, what's koi pond? What's dancing banana? I didn't see those. Well, that's the name of the folder they're in. So you might notice that I have two folders in my data folder to put my GIFs in, and if you put them in folders, then you can put the name of the folder in a / just to let it know that that's there. You don't have to. It's not required, but it's something that you could do to keep your files organized as well as your code. So that's great. And basically it does this. I wanted to just point out that it's interesting to know that this was in our setup originally, as was this, and this was in our setup. So why is that important? You can think of the constructor as kind of like a private little setup just for this object, a personal setup that will make that will make this GIF load all on its own. So a constructor is kind of like a setup. Last but not least, I just set the width and height variable to whatever the width and height of the thing is. It's not a big deal. I just do that. I just make that happen. And I mostly do that. And again, this is, what is this? This is me just setting the width variable to the default width that the picture already came in. so that we know what it is. I'm doing that because part of the checkpoint was also to make a second constructor, so you could send an optional size, a width and height. So this is my second constructor. And I'm using the this keyword. This keyword basically calls my other constructor, so I'm not repeating myself. So basically this is just shorthand for all these things. I guess it does that as well. It does all these things. But then I override the width and height to be whatever the parameters are that I sent. So in this case, I would give it 500 and 500. And it knows which constructor to call because it just counts the parameters and their types. And then, this one has, fewer parameters. This one has 2 extra ints on the end. So it knows, which to do. Last but not least, the show function is pretty straightforward. This is just what was in the draw function previously. So the draw function, to show the GIF, we just make sure we're not at the end. If we are, we loop back around. We also then draw the current frame, and we draw it in these positions. And last but not least, if the frame count is a multiple of speed, then we move to the next one. So this is just like slowing it down or speeding it up. Okay, so there you go. That is the GIF class. Hope that made sense, but don't hesitate to ask more questions. Hopefully that gets you through some of the smaller technical problems. But if you still aren't feeling like you understand things, then raise your hand and I'll come over and help you out. Okay, thank you so much. Bye-bye.